Hey guys, Pete Ramsey here, HVAC Greatness with Kelley McKay of HMC, the HVAC Millionaire Coaching. So Kelley, how you doing today?
Doing great. Got a full
Good,
stomach, full belly. I just ate mashed potatoes and gravy and some broccoli and some turkey. So
rub it in,
I'm
rub it in,
full.
rub it in, rub it in. The time of this recording obviously is Thanksgiving, but you guys are not going to be watching or listening to this on that same day. So, but you have some good memories. But yeah, cool, man. So I was wanting to throw a topic out, and I know we left off those 30 different bullet points because you're huge on mindset. I am too, and we definitely want to circle back around to that. But in one of our groups, and I know you've had these experiences as well, got a very frustrated young man, and his scenario goes like this. He finds a great little trainee. The guy works hard. He learns quickly. He starts off in helping out in installation. He's got that down. He starts transitioning into service. He gets right up to about a year, and the work started slowing down a little bit. So he cut his hours, and he gave him like 32 hours, 26 hours, so on and so forth. And the next thing you know, he gets a text message from his employee and says, "Hey, Pete," I'm going to use my name. He says, "You've been really good to me. I really appreciate the opportunities, but I've been offered a position with another company, and it's like $2 an hour more, and it's a steady 40 hours." He says, "I think I'm going to have to take the job." He says, "We've got some financial needs, and we're just not able to meet them. But I really appreciate what you're doing for me. And if you want to talk about it later, let's talk about it later." And of course he does, because he's got all this time and effort invested in this kid because he had shown potential. And so he goes back and lets the other company know, "You know what, I'm going to stay where I'm at. The guy's going to give me, Pete's going to give me 40 hours. And they counter and they raise it again. And so now he's in this negotiation situation that he probably didn't have to be in, but he is regardless. And he was like, "What do I do?" Right? Because he didn't want to lose this guy because he's got so much time invested in him. And
Yeah,
I just want to open that up for conversation because employees are a big issue right now, finding good help, keeping good help.
it's tough.
And, yeah. So
It's
what were
certainly
your
tough.
thoughts? What do you think on something like that?
Well, one of my first thoughts is that I know that it's never about what you make. It's always about what you keep. And I know that the majority of people don't manage their money properly. So what that creates is just living paycheck to paycheck. And I was the same way for 35 years of my life. I blew every red cent. I blew more than that because back then we were we could write checks at the grocery store. And so I just lived above my means. And so most people are no different. They live above their means. And so any cutting hours whatsoever opens a doorway for, a discussion at home. And, once
Sure.
that emotional boundary has been crossed where they're like, start talking themselves into, yeah, this is going to be better for me. Maybe I should go somewhere else. Well, then it's really hard to pull someone back in once that's happened. But I think the guys, another thought that I have is, I give him kudos for doing whatever he can to hold on to that guy. Because I know I've been in scenarios and situations where I just let him go. And I shouldn't have. I should have fought for him. So I think that's very admirable. And I think he's doing the right thing by at least trying his best to hold on to him. So yeah, it's tough. I've got, a lot more I could say about it. But what do you want to say about it right off the bat?
No, I actually pulled up something from Dave Ramsey, the financial advisor. No relation to Pete Ramsey. I always
Yeah.
joke that that's cousin Dave, but it it's a post that he put, I believe it was on Twitter, and it goes like this. It said, did you know that 36% of your employees are looking for $1 more an hour because they are living paycheck to paycheck? Exactly what you just said. And he says, it doesn't have to be that way. You can be the key in your employees regaining financial stability by providing, and he's pushing something called Smart Dollar as a financial wellness benefit. Learn more about that today. And so that's a very valid point. I have heard of HVAC business owners providing personal financial training, more specifically because they go over into production pay and they've got a windfall of money during the peak seasons, and they're not making much at all during the off season, and
Yeah.
they end up losing them.
That's a real problem too. They adjust their lifestyle to those busy seasons.
I know a few business owners that do that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a mistake.
Yeah. But so that's definitely a key element. But okay. So here's this young owner. He'd only been in business a couple of years. He's got, I think that was his third employee, starting to get a little bit of traction. He's got a lot figured out because he's come a long way. And my first thought was, what does he think that employee is going to do with that free time that he's sending him home without pay? How's he going to fill that time? Especially if he's living paycheck to paycheck. Now, if he's rolling in it, he's probably going to take that free time and go take the family out. But if he's struggling, did he or did the family out? Right. But if he's struggling financially,
yeah, okay, yeah,
and I'm the business owner and I send him home because work's slow, am I not sending him right over to my competition to apply for a job? And maybe I hadn't just thought that through. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think if he's an apprentice and he's actually riding with him on when he does come to work, he's actually working with him. These are the types of conversations that we need to have with our people. And
Agreed.
The bigger you get, the more conversations you have to have. And it's time consuming. I know it's time consuming when you have so much on your plate, but it's like your number one priority now is your internal customers. Your internal customers take care of the external customers, but you as the owner, as the boss, as the leader, you have to take care of the internal people within your company. So I know it's really hard because I always struggled with it. I would get started and then I wouldn't finish, so.
Well, there's a lot of information. We've learned a lot. And I remember when I was privy to this information way back in the 90s. And so this was not common in HVAC industry to understand, but privy to these studies that were performed from universities like Yale and Harvard. And the one study that I recall was, what is it that makes an employee stay or leave their job? And when they listed the employees' results to that question, and they compared it to the business owner's results, they did not line up. Business owners thought that the amount they were getting paid would be number one, that they're leaving for money or they're staying for money.
Right.
But the number one for the employees or associates was that they wanted to be appreciated. They wanted to belong to something. They wanted to be a part of something, to be appreciated, to be recognized, all these different things. And I can't remember all the details, but I wanted to establish that argument, which is not an argument, because one of the things that I have watched happen is we in HVAC have created a bit of an echo chamber. And within that, we're all saying, oh yeah, it's all about culture. Culture is bouncing around. Yeah. You got to have a great culture. If you got a great culture and you take care of your people, they won't leave you. Well, guys, we are in some unique financial times. And I guarantee you the culture's important. There's a lot of things important, but if you are not addressing, in sales, when they tell you that, if you learn, I know you've learned this, Kelley, but when do you handle sales objections? You handle them, you handle them during the sale process. You don't wait till they bring it up. You handle that way early. When do you handle employee retention issues? This goes all the way back to the fundamental levels of developing your culture and determining, okay, I know what's best for me and my company, and I'm gonna make sure I set my expectations, whatever. I know what's best for my customer, and they're going to get served the way that we see fit. And now all of a sudden we're getting slapped across the face and realizing we had better consider, what about what you're calling our customer? And I agree, our employees, our associates, our team members. Are we taking care of them in all of the possible ways, financially, giving them a career path, giving them input, making them a part of something, hiring them based on shared core values so that they fit from day one, so that it feels right when they're working with your team. Do you have a thought? Sorry.
No, that's good. I learned about, I can't remember what book it was in. Excuse me. I think it was The Happiness Advantage by Sean Anker. I highly recommend that book. It's fascinating. But there was a guy named Marshall Lasada, and I may have talked about this before, but just real quickly, I'll recap. He was a psychologist and a business consultant. And so he consulted with multiple different companies in multiple different industries, and the ones who were struggling were always the ones who, what he found, did not praise enough. They did not give enough praise. They didn't, and that's, there's lots of different ways to praise. It's not just always verbal. It could be in a text message. It could be a picture. It could be a letter, a handwritten note, or a thank you card. It could be like a gift card or something. I don't know. There's just lots of ways to show your appreciation. But he developed what was called the Lasada line, which anytime a company fell under this line, which was 3 praises to 1 reprimand or 1, negative talk, or, negative, maybe even if it's not real negative, but perceived as negative, like, hey, that we don't,
Indifference.
Just an indifference. So as long as they would bump their praise up, then automatically productivity rose, and so did profits. And so, but the latest stuff that I've seen, because they teach this like in relationship training also, like if you're struggling in a relationship, it's like 5 to thrive. Well, even relationships, we have relationships with our employees. So it's 5 to thrive. Just think of that. So 5 to 1 now, instead of 3 to 1, 5 to 1. 5 to 1 attaboys or great job or whatever. Just some way of encouragement, of pushing them up, and of course, make sure that it's not just superficial stuff that doesn't where there was no actual good doing being done. Like, make sure they did something good, but it's back to that, catch them something doing good instead of always looking for what they're doing wrong.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that last part. I think that a lot of times we can praise our way right into a mess, and a lot of times, as business owners, and understand the big picture,
it's how you praise.
Yeah, well,
there is a distinct difference between how you should praise.
Yes. And so as business owners, or having more experience in all these different roles that we've already been through, we understand a lot of times we have a more realistic view as to the level of their progress, and maybe that one win that they got, where their view is certainly through through the perspective of them, just themselves. In other words, they can think they're worth a lot more than they actually are. And you've seen this, and you start
I've
getting some
lived
praise
it and it's miserable.
and right. And
I've
so
lived it and it's miserable. Yeah.
and when you're getting that verbal praise, but you're not getting the monetary reflection of that, that can actually work against you.
100%.
But I remember a story where there was a funeral and the family came together. There was the dad, but it was an older dad. He was like, 65 years old, and he had just lost his wife. His children were there. Their children were there. They were adults. The grandchildren were there, uncles, big clan. And the dad had been a strong father figure. He had been a great example, just a really good man. And old school, he didn't show a lot of emotion, but during the funeral, he broke down and just started crying. And you see, the family had never seen that before. And because they'd never seen that before, it had that much more of a power, much more of an impact, and everybody started crying. They'd never seen him express this type of emotion. And when you compare it to our conversation here, when you praise too much, it loses its effectiveness. If you rarely give praise, it has a lot of impact. So there's definitely a balance. I do recall I had a lead installer. He was having some troubles in some part of his job, and he sent in the paperwork on this last job, and he got it right. I can't remember what we were working on. I Xerox copied his paperwork, and I wrote in a big magic marker, "Excellent job, loved it," whatever, something like this. That was it. I just dropped it in his inbox, because that's, it's kind of how we did things back then. And so it turns out that we were doing a job and we were riding in the same truck, and he wanted to swing by his house and run in and get a change of clothes or something like that. Maybe we got wet or whatever. I can't remember now. So he got out and ran in. I said, "Hey, can I use your bathroom real quick?" So he goes to the bedroom. I go to the bathroom. He's down on the right. I'd never been in his house before. And so I'm coming back, on the kitchen refrigerator door was that paper of my praising him with a magnet on it for the whole family to see.
Mm-hmm.
I acted like I didn't see it. I never mentioned it, but I'll never forget that. And I thought, but that really wasn't anything, but for him it was.
Oh,
So
yeah. That's something that my cousin does. He's a principal in Texas, a high school principal. Excuse me. And he every year, or maybe twice a year, he writes to like the spouse or the guardian or whatever, like whether it's some kid that's doing great or some of his faculty that's doing great, because and when their family understands, like it's a different type of, and that's one of the ways that you can change their lives, is by sharing with their family. Like, go past them, share with their family, write his wife a nice note saying how much you appreciate all his effort, and how that you understand the sacrifices that he has to make once in a while when he works late, and how much it means to you and the company, and what, and then talk about the future. Like, we're going to build something great here. And like, you talk about like lighting somebody up. That's something I never did, and I wish I would have done.
I never did either. I heard that a similar story as well, and I remember thinking, man, I wish I'd have thought of that. Because it was something like, you don't realize how much of a hero your husband is to these people in need right now. He's coming through, he's working the over hours, he's getting these people, air conditioning when they have absolutely nothing. We really appreciate, we know that you are making the sacrifices as well. et cetera, et cetera. Right. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a great example, Kelley. Yeah. Yes. So there is that.
There's
There.
real quick. I have like a list here of, and I'll just tell you like the top 3. It's not, this list is identical, mind you, and it's 10 ways to really motivate an employee. And so the top 3 for an employee that's not a manager or a supervisor: number 1, appreciation. Number 2, filling in on things, right? They want to know what's going on. And I've heard lots of stories on that. Like if you don't tell them what's going on, they're going to make it up anyways. And it's going to be way worse than what's actually going on if you don't share it. So be sure to share what's going on. And then an understanding attitude.
Right. Right.
And those 3 things, that's the top of the list for an employee, but it's actually the bottom of the list for a supervisor. Top 3 things for a supervisor is good wages, job security, promotion opportunities. I thought that was really interesting because, and I do believe it. I believe that's probably true. You know, it's just different mindsets too.
Yeah, the challenge that we're seeing as an industry right now, obviously, we don't have enough trained and experienced people to go around. And so this is creating a bidding war. And there's always a bigger fish in your market that can afford to pay more than you can, even if it's, you know, the utility company's maintenance department, or it could be a grocery store's maintenance department. It could be an industrial parks maintenance department. And of course, it could be another heating and air conditioning company. But if we don't put a process in place, and then we have also these investors that are coming in, they're buying up these companies, private equity groups and such. They've got the money behind them to go ahead and take that loss on the front end and then recuperate it later if need be. So back reflecting to my example, we called him Pete. I wonder in 11 months time, based on what he was paying him. I remember the pay scale he started him at like $16 an hour and he had him up to 24 or something like that in 11 months. I mean, just boom, 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 boom. I wonder how much money he'd invested in getting this employee to this point. And what does it take to get them the rest of the way to the point where you can turn them loose and they can start to be billable for you and productive for you? And obviously it depends on the capacity. If your business model does not have good maintenance agreements in place, then you can't turn them loose on your maintenance agreements because you don't have any. And so maybe you have to put him helping installs or something with some type of supervision. But what would you think? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Kelley, so you can think this through.
Put me on the spot. I don't care.
Okay. So what would you think that it would cost today to take a trainee that knows nothing? Maybe he's come out of the trade school, hopefully, and he's got relatively good attitude you're looking for. He's got the aptitude to learn. And let's say that he's average. It takes him, 2 years or so to get to the point where you can really turn him loose. But
Sure.
let's say to get him through that first year, what do you think you will have invested in him?
First, I would say if he has the aptitude and the ambition to actually learn outside of work, and he asks questions while he's at work, and he comes to work every day and he works hard and he has all that going for him, well, he'll we had one guy that just walked through the door one day, and he had just moved back from Colorado, and he had done a little bit of HVAC before he left for Colorado, but that's not what he did in Colorado. And I'm telling you, he went straight to work in install, and within 3-4 months, he was pretty proficient at install as a helper. And I would say it was only a year after that, maybe a year and a half, he was running service calls by himself. Very mature, a little bit older guy, has his stuff together. Like, he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's smart. So, but as far as like monetizing how much it actually cost, I mean, that's hard because I don't know I don't even know how to calculate
Okay.
what would you would,
So,
you know,
so let's say $20 an hour,
yeah,
40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, plus let's say that you're sending to some classes, so you're paying for that. You're spending money in some other ways. I think it'd be pretty easy to spend $50,000 in the first year
yeah,
investing in a person, right?
oh yeah, with
And
tools and stuff. Yeah.
and because we have limited funds, it's not easy for us to bring on 3 or 4 at a time and see which one works out. We probably have to be really selective and just choose one. And so the loss of that candidate would be much more painful if we don't have a backup person. Then we got to start that clock all over again with somebody else. If we get to the point like our friend Pete there, who made the mistake of cutting his hours because he was trying to save a few dollars, and he knows the math, and he's like, man, I've already got 40 to $50,000 invested in this kid, and I'm going to lose him for let's say $2.
I mean, $2 more an hour. What's $2
$8
times
a week.
40, 80 extra bucks a
$100 a week. $100 a week. What is that going to cost him in experienced labor applied directly to revenues, maybe even running calls and stuff like that? And what is it going to cost him in terms of the other candidate has to come in that additional 50? So can you see where it might make sense? He needs to open up his wallet. He better do it now. Better hang on to that person. See what I'm saying? If upstairs, if this doesn't become a situation where, the trainee becomes a prima donna, I'm worth more, then he's lost. The damage has been done. But what
you
I'm
never
thinking,
know when that's going to happen. That could happen.
you don't. In valid point. But if you've done your job, this is why I'm saying, I have a 9-step program, right? And the 3rd step is culture. It goes all the way back to this. If we had done this work and everything that you were talking about, which you describe with clear experience, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. But how many of us know this stuff, but we really don't take this knowledge and convert it into part of our strategy on the front end to prevent these scenarios from ever coming up? Because you're in the position of leverage until that point, and now all of a sudden that trainee, it goes to their head, like what we were saying, he may think he's worth more than he actually is based on all this external stimuli. Versus,
yeah, and if he had more employees and he was working by himself, they talk. And so if you get somebody who makes $1 more than him, who's been there for 3 years and he's only been there for 6 months, he's gonna become disgruntled. I've seen it happen because he's like, I do everything that this guy does. Like maybe he's making $16 an hour and the other guy who's been with you for 3 years makes 26. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is like, what do you do to try to prevent this from happening? Number one is find out what they want. Like, what are they fighting for? What are they coming to work for every day? What's important to them? What do they do outside of work? What do they think about? Like, get to know them. Like, we need to get to know them on a personal level. And the reason for that is because we want to help them get what they want. Because if somebody continues to get what they want in life and they see the progress and they know that you helped them get there, you're going to build not only more respect, but also more camaraderie, more of that mentorship, leadership type role.
Belonging.
Belonging, like that's another thing.
So when we go through a sales call, because I want to compare this back to your insight. My employees are my customers. But when you go on a sales call and you're dealing with a customer who's a homeowner and replacing the equipment, it's your job, in order to be an effective salesperson or comfort advisor, comfort consultant, to take that customer and be their guide and take them through this world that they don't understand and bring them through scenarios that they never considered. And in doing so, you help them design a system that is not only ideal for their home and the application, but their family members. Maybe they have allergies and things that's been addressed. Maybe a sensitivity like sound issues and all these different variables. But if you've really done a good job, and we do bad jobs all the time. We do these wonderful things above and beyond, but we don't communicate it, and the customer doesn't appreciate it because they think everybody does that. So our ability to take that customer through these different areas that they never even really consider and build something for them that's customized, and then obviously install it, commission it, and maintain it, and take care of that customer moving forward, you're building a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. What if in our cultural development from the very front end, we go down those paths that they did not consider? They just think, well, I just want a job, I want to make some money. But you're literally taking them through, like what you're saying, some financial planning, some financial training, some career development, a career path, to be a part of a team. We're going to send you to specialized training, and we want your feedback. We're developing this new program. Your experience in this company matters. We want you to help with the input. And so you develop, you craft, you get it all out into a system out of your head, because we're bad about just trying to, this is the problem with, owner operators. We keep everything up here. We don't get them into systems. And we literally put it into the perfect culture, right? We give it everything that it needs from day one, because we've thought all these things through, everything it needs in order to not only make sure that customer's happy and content and they're not drawn away for a few dollars an hour. There's all these other motives that we call it entanglement. Employee entanglement. You've heard that expression?
I haven't.
So employee entanglement can be both positive and negative. Think about when you open up a bank account and you go in and you set up automatic payment for your different subscriptions, and you tie that to your PayPal, all the different stuff you do with your bank account. So you go through all this work, get all your accounts set up, everything set up, and you're going. And somebody comes along, and another bank comes along and says, "Hey, we've got these great banking services, and we're going to do this, and that for you." My thought might be, man, to change bank accounts, what a pain in the rear that would be. I've already got everything set up. It's so easy to just stay with who I'm at. I'm good. Right, so that might be an example of entanglement from a negative standpoint. Another one, like with your customer, entanglement might be, and I know you do this, employee rewards for maintenance agreement customers. To make, the longer they stay with you, the more points or dollars they build towards a new system, uninterrupted maintenance agreements, things like that.
Yeah. So
if we did entanglement for employees as well, that's all blended in. I mean, it's there to protect everybody, nothing negative, but it just making it.
I know what you're talking about now. I have heard of examples of this. I never heard it called that before.
Yeah, well, I think I learned that back in my Linux days. They were really good. When I worked with them, they taught us a lot of cool stuff. And it's nice because if it applies at that level, it can apply at the contractor level as well. And so I was able to go share that with my dealers, and then and so on and so forth. But yeah, so low customer friction makes customers buy easier, right? High employee friction makes it difficult for them to stay, and sometimes we're working against ourselves. And so here's young Pete cutting his guy's hours to save a few bucks, and he just hurt himself. And he's blaming the kid, snotty nosed kid all the time and effort I put in him. He doesn't appreciate me. And we do this too.
I was guilty of that, 100% guilty of that.
Sorry about that.
We've all been guilty of that. Come on.
Yeah. But we're all human, that you're.
It's
like
mostly it's because you're hurt, like you're hurt emotionally because you do care about them and you don't want to see them leave. And you know that you've done everything you can for them to the best of your ability. And it hurts to fall short of that, to fall short when it comes to that. So.
Yeah. And everybody's got to look out for themselves. And so we do live in a world where, we do live in a world where, what does this mean to me? That's my number one question. And so an owner's first thought is, man, all the time I've invested in everything else. Now what am I going to do? It's me. That's what they're thinking. And that employee's thinking me. But back to the example of when you do this, let's say you nitrogen purge your line set and you a few other steps that you do on your installation, and your customer doesn't realize that you do that, and they just kind of see you as, that's normal. Then they really can't appreciate the fact that you are doing a better job for them, unless there is a way to communicate that without, bragging on yourself. If your employees, all this stuff that you've done for them, if they can't perceive that as a huge contrast between what you're doing and what everybody else out there is doing, they're not going to appreciate it. They're not going to value it as much. There are people that have that insight and that ability to perceive that, but there's others, how they are. They're walking down the street on their phone in their world. They don't know, they don't really pay attention and just assume that, this is the way it is everywhere. So it's kind of like, our customers, all contractors are the same. You all have the same license and insurance, and you buy the same equipment off the same assembly line. It's all the same, right?
Yeah.
So this is the point, I think, when it comes to, and there's a lot more to this, obviously, because we're going to have to recruit, we're going to have to train, and we're going to have to retain. We're going to have to motivate. We're going to have to reward. We're going to have team building. We have all that other stuff. But I'll throw this at you, Kelley. I was talking to a, yes, sir.
Real quick, when we I'm certain I shared this before, but this is from a Forbes magazine article, Forbes.com. The research shows that 87% of employees want to be developed in their job, but only a third report actually receiving the feedback they need to engage and improve. And it says that managers who offer frequent and continuous feedback influence their employees to be 3.2 times more likely to strongly agree they are motivated to do outstanding work. So when they were asked if they are motivated to do great work, they're 3.2 times more likely to say yes if the manager offers frequent and continuous feedback to the employee. And 2.7 times more likely to be engaged at work. So you're almost increasing your chance of productivity and engagement by a factor of 3 by just giving feedback. So, and earlier when I was saying there's a way to praise, it's not just saying, good job. Oh man, you rock. And I made a horrible mistake. Like that. you cannot do not put your employees on a pedestal.
Yeah.
I had an old video where I talked about this, and some guy just commented last week, because I think sometimes people find me on YouTube and they just do a deep dive and start watching a bunch of videos. This is like a 4-year-old video. And he made some stupid off the wall comment about, this is why I'm glad I don't work for anybody anymore. You sound just like my boss. Well, you have no flipping idea what you're talking about, because what I'm saying is the truth. And if you don't believe me, go do it tomorrow and see how your people change. Go tell somebody tomorrow how you can't live without them and how great they are. I promise you, they will change in a heartbeat. And then a week later, now you're not a priority anymore. They're not showing up on time. They make snide remarks. Everything shifts when you put someone on a pedestal. So don't do it. But I'm not saying not to praise, but what you praise is their progress, their effort, their choice or choices that they're making, or the strategy they're using. As long as you keep it in those categories, you'll be fine. Don't go outside of that category, and so it's just science and it's psychology. But
well,
put
first
somebody
of all,
on a pedestal and just see what happens. I promise you'll be sorry.
Yeah.
It's I don't know why, but it's just human psychology. It flips a switch inside of it.
Yeah, it's human nature. But first of all, just to circle back around, anybody that publicly puts themselves out there online, you're going to be attacked. And it is amazing at the ignorance and the nastiness of certain people. And it's interesting, and I know what it is. In a word, it's context. They don't see all of these different angles, and from their perspective, based on their experience and their insights, they want to attack. But they're not fully informed, and therefore they come across sounding like idiots and basically,
yeah, and that's okay. I'm over it. There's tons of them out there, and it doesn't bother me at all. I just think, man, when you have no idea, like if you don't like what I'm saying, just stop watching me, get off my channel, unsubscribe. Like, I don't care. But why do you feel the need to, like, I don't get it. I really don't care. So,
well, no, we all have to turn people away that we just can't work with, and it's not mean or anything like that. We're just not going to. You're not going to appreciate it, and it could be that you're not ready, or
we're just not a good fit. Yeah,
we don't share the same values.
It just won't work. So
exactly. But what I was circling back around to the context piece. Here's a person that's so far out of touch that they're just blasting their ignorance. Now let's reflect it on the rest of us. We're all here because we need to fill in some gaps. The people that are listening to this are saying, wow, these guys have been around a while. I want to hear what they say because they've walked a mile in my shoes. They're not just, one of these gurus that knows everything and, graduated from college and never cut their hand on a piece of sheet metal before or burnt their face while brazing the discharge line. Sorry, Kelley. But they don't have the real world experience. And that, I remember, so adding that context is where the magic is. I had a guy ask the question just the other day, Pete, I want to send my guy to some training. Would you recommend this trainer? And I said, well, who are you sending? Oh, one of my guys. Well, what's his capacity? How long has he been in the business? How far along is he? And he's in service and he's been with me a year. And so the more questions I begin to ask, the more he realizes, if you can send 5 people to the same training, and they're basically the same technical and competence level, and you're going to get 5 levels of buy-in, 5, let's say, commitments in terms of results, and just 5 different sets of results with 5 different people. But why? Because it boils back to exactly what we're talking about that. It goes all the way back to the fundamentals. When you're building a business on these different things and you put this person to this capacity, and I told you I repeat myself, I'm going to repeat it again. I sold equipment in the same market for Linux to the same customers for years, wearing the same clothes, carrying the same agenda. And when I came back a few years later, the same customers, same clothes, same Pete, selling Goodman, I got half the interest. I got a fraction of the orders. I didn't, because this type of customer was different. But guess what? When I figured out the Goodman customers and I went after them, I crushed it, because there's something for everybody. And so if you're going to sell, the company that you're working for, how they are perceived, how they're enveloped in the visual representation, in the culture, and all this stuff, this matters, guys. Then you can send them to the training, if it's the right training. Then you can see the results. I love these conversations where, well, he's, I hired a salesman and he's not closing enough, and it's his job to sell. I just give him the price. No. You got, I work for Lennox, I work for Goodman. There's two different brands, two different areas of the market. You have to be, you can't sell against let's say Mercedes-Benz when you're, I don't know, a low end these days. Hyundai's, I used to say Hyundai, but they're pretty good these days. But let's just say versus a Hyundai, right? It's just not the same. And so this is all intertwined, it's all connected, and you have to go back to the foundation. And otherwise, you're going to be just like young Pete, who's all of a sudden dealing with all this chaos, and he never saw it coming because he didn't do the foundation. And back to your example there, you sound just like my ex-boss. Isn't it funny how, as we mature as business owners, we start to act more and more like our ex-boss because it turns out they knew something we didn't, right?
Yeah, it was just, that was a lesson that I just learned the hard way. And I didn't learn it the first time I did it. It took me, I repeated myself multiple times before I really caught on and noticed what was happening. But once I noticed what was happening, I finally learned my lesson. I never did it again.
Sure.
So I never had to put up with that stuff again, thankfully. But yeah, you're right. It does depend. If somebody has, back to this whole, trying to keep somebody from leaving, I took this leadership training a while back, and it was, they were talking about like Steve Jobs and is it Michael Dell of
Yeah.
Dell Computers? So they would have these big rallies, like year-end rallies or whatever it is. They're getting ready to launch a new product or something. They bring everybody from Apple in, and they would like, there's footage of this because I know in that training they actually showed it, and they showed Steve Jobs like rallying the troops and creating an enemy out of Michael Dell.
Oh,
And
goodness.
so listen, so it's an us versus them scenario. So this is strategy. And if you can, because if I paint a picture and we build this hatred for our competitors, and we talk about, and we don't have to go around talking about how crappy they are, even though a lot of them are really crappy. But when we just start developing this culture that is like, we're going to beat them, right? It's no different than your hometown football game on Friday nights, the rival teams. If you can create a rivalry within your culture against a different company in town or multiple companies, it creates this us versus them. And I want to be with us. I don't want to be with them. And so there's more of that entanglement too. There's just a natural mindset shift. Like, those guys suck. I don't want to go work there. We want to work here because we know we're better. And so I thought that was really interesting. And it was, I think it's happened because you can compare it to the football field or the baseball diamond, whatever. Like, you can compare it. There's rivalries. And those teams will fight harder, play their tails off when they're going against a rival. So it's one way to help bring people together.
Yeah, getting having a common cause. So what you're reminding me of is an expression, and this is one of those universal truths. I've heard this with coaches, like with wrestlers or martial artists, that they keep losing, is because they're focused on man, this guy's really good. So when he does this, I'm going to do this other, and so I'm prepared for all the stuff that he's doing. Focusing on the defense instead of on the offense, and the best defense is a good offense. And so, to your point, when you're in offensive mode, we're going to get these guys. The defense, you got to be prepared, of course, but the defense does tend to take care of itself, doesn't it? Yeah.
There's you know, if you have multiple people and you're afraid of, like, I mean, multiple people on your team, like you're a 10 person team and you've got several people in the field, and, you know, if times get tough for any reason and you've got to cut people, just like Pete did in that scenario, you know, well, here's what I would tell you, like, just from my experiences, I would immediately, right now, cut the people who you already know you don't want on your team anymore.
Yep.
Cut them immediately. And even though that may put you a little bit short, you're left with the better people on your team, and pay them more. Just pay them more. Pay them more than you think you can afford. And, but, you know, also, there's always this balance with business. It's a constant balance. So you can't go out and just automatically charge a lot more to a customer. And even if you're providing a lot more service, if you're not going to also provide more service and benefits and incentives for your internal customers. So there's always a balance. If you only do one without the other, you're going to find yourself in a jam. People get upset. And so there has to be this delicate balance of, it's always like, you know, there's no light without dark. You can't be happy if you've never been sad. Like, there's always a balance. And so we have to pay attention to those balances and try to keep them as balanced as we can, in my opinion, just from my experience. You know, I would go one way, I'd go all in one particular way and not pay attention to, like, the complete and total opposite of it. And it always would get me in a jam, and I just never realized what was happening.
Yeah. So the highs are much more enjoyable. You know, they're enjoyable only
because you've been through lows.
The lows. Yeah.
You wouldn't know. It's like a couple of months ago, this guy named Andrew Tate, I don't know if you Cobra Tate, if you're on YouTube at all, you couldn't have not seen him. But I went down that rabbit hole, and I probably watched, I don't know, 10 different interviews, and, you know, probably 4 hours worth of content. And but a lot of what he says, not everything, but a lot of what he says just makes sense to me. And he was like, if everybody had a 6-pack, it wouldn't be cool to have a 6-pack. And he's right, because if it takes no effort to go get a 6-pack, then you're not setting yourself apart anymore. So yeah, back to, I know I'm getting off the subject and stuff, but back to just keeping employees. I know that I heard or seen a post in Facebook of Tommy Mello, and he was talking about, he hired a dream manager for his team. And I believe that the whole industry is going to shift to this.
Wow.
I believe the whole industry, every successful HVAC business that has 30 plus employees, is going to shift to this, because it's that important. And one person, if that's their sole job, they can make it happen. They can schedule the time, intentional time spent with each individual employee to work on their dreams, you know, to goal set with them, to develop a plan, to coach them, to help them. And I believe everybody's culture will shift to this.
Well, this is
that's
another
a prediction.
It's a great prediction. it's another example of psychological entanglement. If you're at point A is where you're at right now, and your point B is your dream, and your company is in the middle helping you strategize and put this thing together, they become the needed element in order to get you there as an employee. As you're selling, and I learned this, it's interesting, that was a class, there was a lady, I'm sure she's retired now, Gail Cohen, and Lennox International hired her to come and teach the sales team, the territory managers. And that was her basic overall strategy was, you don't sell heating and air conditioning, you sell the dream. And I remember the first time I used it, there was a dealer down on the coast of North Carolina.
I'm interested to hear this, by the way, because when it comes to selling heating and air conditioning to a customer, that's like, I feel like it's it's like a non-emotional type buying decision usually for people. It's hard to like get them emotionally involved in purchasing a new heating and air conditioning system if there's not major problems, going on. So yeah, continue. I want to hear this because this is helpful for marketing material as well.
So no, it's actually part of what I was sharing with you. This goes back to step one in our 9-point, or our 9, well, it's actually 27 steps, but step one is 3 key areas, and it's about identifying your ideal customer avatar. In other words, your best customer that you want more of.
Sure.
And we compare them to the ones that you already have, and we start to collect this data, and we identify these shared elements. And back to my story. So
yeah,
I was not selling to the consumer. I was selling to a new Lennox dealer, and the owner was a Harley enthusiast. And during Gail Cohen's training, I'd learned, and I said, well, let me test the waters on this. And so I'm talking, let's just call the guy John. I don't remember his name. It's been a long time ago. And so John's telling me about, he wants to ride Harleys, and he's going to do this like long trip. And, he and his wife are going to do all this stuff. And they're going to bounce to all these places, whatever that was. And we had been negotiating to come together, and we wanted to put the Lennox sign on the side of his building. And he threw up a resistance. And that's a Lennox motivation, guys. I'm not telling you to do this because you want your brand. He says, you know what? This is, John's Heating and Air. And if Lennox wants real estate up there, they can pay me because I'm not putting it up there. And I don't know. I just reacted, and I said, John, not only are you going to put that sign up there, but you're going to be so glad you did, because it's because of that sign that your business is going to multitude. You're going to make so much money and free up so much time that you're not going to have time to even look at that sign, because you're going to be on that Harley, and you're going to be on that trip, and you and your wife are not even going to be thinking about this place and the money that sign is making for you right now. So we started.
Right. Let's go ahead.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But it's selling the emotion. I saw a clip the other day where they were talking about the buzzword for copywriters is the word new, because it's tingly. People want, it's new,
Oh yeah,
but
people love novelty.
He went in and sold a feeling. He was selling nostalgia. He was talking about how to do that. But our time's winding down. We probably ought to pick this back up on another topic. But let me at least say this, because to your point, generally speaking, when you're selling to businesses, their motivator is gain. More money, more profits, more customers. But when you're selling to homeowners, their motivators are pain. Remove all of these pains, and you remove the resistance or the blockades that are stopping them from moving forward. And so we go into the values, we go into the pains, we go into the fears, we go into the preconceived notions, and we go into the uncertainties. And we also go to how to counter the, let's call them the limiting beliefs that they have, and where to insert these. And so all of this has to go in, but you have to know the pain in order to sell the remedy. And you don't sell vitamins when they're asking for medicine. I think we may have
And the
talked
only
about
way to learn what the pain is by what? Asking questions. You have
Sure,
to ask
and
questions to find out what it is, what's important to them. And you have to be
Th-
genuinely curious.
but fundamentally, this goes into your market research and your customer avatar research. Okay, you'll identify what these common ones are, but what you learn to do, and this is where a lot of the advertising agencies, they just want to sell heat and air. That's, you know, these advertising agencies, they sell products, but selling services are different than selling products. And the companies that understand that, and they have these soft and warm, weird commercials, and all of a sudden they have these loyal customers that pay more, and they're more loyal, and they're not going anywhere. It's mind blowing, you know. But logically, I can save you all this money. I do a better job. I'm going to give you more time. I'm the owner, and I'm personally going to be involved here. But people don't buy off of logic. It's got to be part of it, or else they get buyer's remorse. But they buy off of emotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what this whole thing is about.
And what you're
The
talking
same
about
goes
is,
with your employees. I just want to throw that in there, but go ahead.
what you're talking about with, because I love Dan Kennedy. I don't know if you've ever read any of his books or listened to him talk, but he's great. And he's a super sharp copywriter. And what you were explaining as far as, like, you know, how do you sell more of anything, no matter what business you're in? Well, for instance, you know, depending on what type of business you're in, I guess, but his old saying is like, who's your best customer if you own a hot dog stand? Right. Well, and then people answer like, well, people who are hungry, people who are people who like hot dogs, you know, whatever. And I think I gave the answer away right there away, but who do you sell it to is hungry people. Like, people have to be, at any given time, our brain filters out so much information. And I always use like the baby stroller or baby crib, because I'm not in the market for that. If I see ads for that, I won't physically see them. My brain will not register, because I don't care about it, because I'm not in the market. I don't have a newborn to take care of. So, but yet somebody who just had a baby, that's relevant to them. And so your brain will notice that. And you might even compare prices, or you might actually purchase it. So you've got to, the good thing about heating and air conditioning, whether we realize it or not, is there's always somebody out there who has a problem that needs to be solved.
They're
And
hungry.
so they're hungry. Yes. Normally during slower periods of the season, we would like to market towards the people who, you know, if you look back at your history and you know that some months are slower than others, then there's always people with money who have the funds right now at any given time to purchase a new system. And they know they need a new system, and they're waiting for a deal, a rebate, you know, a winter rebate, a summer special, whatever. And they'll wait for those deals because they have the money. So a lot of times people will target those during those particular seasons of the year. But anyhow, just a little, I mean, that's some of the stuff that I've learned just over the last year from reading a bunch of Dan Kennedy books, because, and it makes sense.
You're spot on. It's that hunger aspect that we were talking about. It's not I need a brand new system, and that is my need, because this one's shot. The weather's here, hot or cold or whatever, and I'm hungry. But my hunger isn't for the new system. My hunger is because I've got family. They're coming in here. They're going to be here in 3 days. This is a large investment. I don't know anybody. These pains are that are strongest when you have a marketing message that appeals specifically to whatever that is. Oh gosh, I'm not prepared for this, but let's say that it's the fastest installation. Well, fast is not good. Fast and cheap are two values that customers always share, but they're not the best. But whatever that pain is, if your message happens to communicate clearly in a way that is received, you're going to get the phone call. And so this is when we create our core message. There's generally a couple of major facets that people are going to identify with. So you've got the core message, but it's like it's being solution centric and not customer centric. You've got this wonderful solution, and the benefits are this, and this. Well, that customer's attracted to this solution. That customer may be attracted to the other solution, or I should say benefit of the main solution. And your ability to communicate those to their particular hunger, if you will, is the key. It really gets deep, guys. And I appreciate Kelley. And I know some of your listeners are probably fell asleep, but this is huge and it is powerful. And it's got to be part of your success plan if you're going to get to that level. So stick around. We're going to be talking about more of this stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So hope you guys enjoyed our conversation here, and we will see you here in a couple of weeks. Next week, I am going to a coaching summit, so I'm excited about that. I actually get to go spend some time with my business partner, which I haven't seen since like 2017, I think 2018. So I'm excited about that. We're both going to this coaching summit. So going to be a good time. Anyhow,
Well,
happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next call. Of course, it'll probably be the next click of a button if you're on the playlist. And so we'll see you over there. Bye-bye.
Peace.